The following is a transcript recovered from the internal archives of the Division of Anomalous Research and Knowledge. Classification level: restricted. This file was not meant to be released. What you are about to hear is real. Archive log. File 002. Date of the original recording: October 14th, 1989. Location: DARK Monitoring Station 7, Rural Virginia. Analyst on duty: Senior Officer Raymond Greer. Badge number 4471. File status: previously sealed under Executive Order 11652. Unsealed date: unknown. You are listening because someone wanted you to. Before we begin, I want you to understand something about the nature of these files. They are not dramatizations. They are not reconstructions. They are primary source documents. The words you will hear were written by real people in real rooms, under real pressure, about real events that the country government spent considerable resources ensuring you would never know about. The fact that you are hearing them now is not an accident. It is a decision. Someone made a choice to let these files out. We do not know who. We do not know why they chose now, after decades of silence, to allow this archive to become visible. What we know is that the documents are authentic. What we know is that the events described within them cannot be explained by any publicly acknowledged government program. And what we know is that the story they tell is not finished. To understand what happened at Station 7, you need to understand what came before it. In File 001, a tape was recovered, an analog recording from an abandoned broadcast station somewhere in rural Virginia. The footage showed a signal, a frequency that had no registered origin, no licensed broadcaster, no satellite uplink, no government transmission code attached to it, just a signal, appearing on equipment that should not have been able to receive it, broadcasting content that should not have existed, on a frequency that, according to every official record, was and remains completely unoccupied. And a figure, visible for approximately 3 seconds at timestamp 1 minute and 17 seconds into the footage, standing in the frame, not moving, not reacting to the camera, not reacting to anything, simply present, as though it had always been there, in that frame, in that static, and had only just decided to let itself be seen. Whether it had always been there and the previous frames simply failed to capture it, or whether it arrived in that moment, is a question the tape cannot answer. The resolution is too degraded, the corruption too extensive. What is clear is that it is there, and what is equally clear is that it is looking directly at the camera. DARK analysts reviewed the tape 47 times across a 6-week period. They never identified the figure. What they did identify was the frequency itself, and the frequency is where File 002 begins. The frequency was logged at 87.9 megahertz, unremarkable on its face, a dead spot on the FM dial, sitting between 2 weak regional stations, close enough to both that any bleed from either would have masked a low-power transmission entirely. No commercial station has ever broadcast from that specific frequency in the state of Virginia. Not in 1989, not in the years before, not in the years since, but for 11 consecutive nights, beginning October 4th, 1989. The monitoring equipment at Station 7 detected a broadcast signal originating from that frequency with unusual clarity. Not interference, not bleed, a deliberate, structured, coherent signal. The signal lasted exactly 44 minutes each night. It always began at 3:17 in the morning. It always ended at 4:01. It never varied by so much as a second. And every night, for 10 of those 11 nights, the content was the same. Senior Officer Raymond Greer was the first analyst formally assigned to investigate the signal. He had been working at Station 7 for 3 years at the time. By all accounts, he was a methodical man, detail-oriented, not given to speculation or embellishment. His colleagues described him as someone who wrote very long, very accurate reports and kept every piece of paperwork he had ever filed. His initial report, filed October 7th, 1989, 3 days into the monitoring period, described the broadcast content as follows. The broadcast opens with approximately 90 seconds of white noise. Standard frequency interference consistent with analog signal degradation. Following the noise, a tone is detected. Single frequency, consistent pitch, duration approximately 6 seconds. The tone is followed by a voice. The voice is male, adult. Approximate age difficult to determine. There is no distinguishable regional accent. The cadence is slow and deliberate, as though the speaker is reading from a prepared text, though the content itself does not follow any known military or intelligence protocol format currently in use or previously documented in this analyst's experience. The voice reads numbers. End of initial report excerpt. Number stations. If you are unfamiliar with that term, allow me to explain, because the context matters enormously for what comes next. During the Cold War, shortwave radio stations began broadcasting what appeared to be completely meaningless sequences of numbers, letters, and tones across frequencies that any civilian with a shortwave receiver could access. These transmissions were detected across Europe, North America, parts of South America, and Asia. They operated openly, audible to anyone who happened to tune past them. They were never officially acknowledged by any government. The prevailing theory, later confirmed in detail by intelligence defectors from multiple countries, was that number stations were used to transmit encrypted messages to field agents operating abroad. The system was elegantly simple. A spy embedded in a foreign country could tune into a specific frequency at a specific time, hear a sequence of numbers that corresponded to their designated code, decode the message at home using a one-time pad that they had brought with them when they were first deployed, and receive their instructions without ever making contact with another human being. No meetings, no phone calls, no physical handoffs, nothing that could be surveilled, intercepted, or traced back to a handler. The country operated several of these stations. So did the Soviet Union. So did Cuba, Britain, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, others whose identities remain disputed. This is not theory. This is documented history. The stations existed. Some of them are still broadcasting today. What is not documented, what has never been officially explained, is what Raymond Greer heard on October 14th, 1989.
Because on that night, the broadcast changed. Greer's report from that evening is the longest single document in the entire File 002 archive. 41 pages, handwritten on standard government issue paper in blue ballpoint ink. Parts of it have been redacted by parties unknown, the ink of the redactions different from Greer's own. suggesting the alterations were made after the fact by someone who reviewed the report before it was archived. Parts of it are water damaged to the point of being beyond legibility. Several pages appear to have been torn out entirely, the stubs still visible at the binding. What remains is enough. The broadcast began as it always did. 90 seconds of white noise. The 6-second tone. Then the voice. But this time, the numbers stopped. After 3 minutes and 22 seconds of the standard number sequence, the voice paused. A long pause. Greer noted it lasted approximately 8 seconds in real time, though he wrote that it felt considerably longer. Long enough to make him lean forward in his chair. Long enough for him to set down his coffee. Long enough to make him reach for his pen, which he had not been using because there had been nothing in 10 nights of identical broadcasts worth noting by hand. Then the voice said something that was not a number. Greer wrote it down verbatim in his report. He underlined it twice. He noted in the margin that he had replayed the recording 3 times to confirm accuracy before writing it down. They moved the patients last Thursday. The ones from the 4th floor. The quiet floor. They did not move them to another hospital. I checked. I checked all the transfer records, and the names do not exist in any system. 14 patients. 14 names that were there on Wednesday and gone by Friday. If you are hearing this, you already know what that means. Look for the ones who sign with the letter H. Do not go to the 4th floor after dark. I repeat, do not go to the 4th floor after dark. After this, the voice returned to reading numbers, as though nothing had happened, as though those 37 words had not just been spoken in plain English over an unregistered frequency at 3:24 in the morning, embedded inside what appeared to be a coded intelligence transmission, on a broadcast that, according to every official record, did not exist. The numbers continued for the remaining 40 minutes and 38 seconds of the broadcast. Then the signal cut out at precisely 4:01, exactly as it had every night before. Greer sat in the monitoring room for some time after the broadcast ended. He noted in his report that he did not move for approximately 20 minutes. He described what he was feeling not as fear exactly, but as the particular disorientation that comes from a fact inserting itself into a reality where it has no explanation. A fact with weight and edges and specific language that is simply there, demanding to be accounted for, with no framework available to account for it. He filed his report the next day. His supervisor at the time, a man identified throughout the DARK documentation only as Director H, reviewed the report and stamped it with a single word: routine. Raymond Greer was reassigned to a different monitoring station 3 days later. No explanation was given. No debriefing was conducted. His personal request for a follow-up investigation into the origin of the broadcast was denied without comment. He never worked for DARK again. This is where the file gets interesting. Because Raymond Greer did not simply accept the reassignment and move on. He did not go home and file this away as one of those things you see in this line of work that you are not supposed to see. He did not retire and take up fishing and let the quiet floor become a half-remembered thing from a career he rarely discussed. He spent the next 6 years trying to find out what had happened to the 14. We know this because of a second set of documents, separate from the official DARK archive. Personal notes and investigative records recovered from a rented storage unit in Alexandria, Virginia in 2019. The unit had been rented under a false name since 1996. The rental payments came from an account that does not appear in any financial record we have been able to access. When the payments finally stopped, the storage facility followed standard procedure. They waited the required time. They notified the registered address, which did not exist. They auctioned the contents. A private collector purchased 4 cardboard boxes for $11. He was looking for vintage electronics. He did not know what he had. He stored the boxes in his garage for 2 years before curiosity or boredom, or some combination of the two, led him to open them. Inside were the notes of Raymond Greer. The notes are extensive, methodical in structure, as you might expect from a man his colleagues described the way they described him, but with an intensity to them that goes beyond professional thoroughness. Obsessive is a word that comes to mind. Obsessive the way a person becomes when they know something is wrong and cannot make anyone else see it. Greer had spent years tracking admissions records from 11 different hospitals in Virginia and Maryland, cross-referencing patient names against transfer records, discharge records, and death records, building a picture from the gaps, looking for the 14 by looking for the places where 14 people should have been and were not. He found 3 of them, or rather, he found the absence of 3 of them. 3 names that appeared clearly and consistently in hospital records up to a certain point, and then ceased to exist entirely. No discharge papers, no transfer authorization, no death certificate, no family notification, no insurance claim, no follow-up appointment, no record of any kind suggesting that the administrative machinery that surrounds a human life in a medical context had processed these 3 people out of existence in any of the normal ways. The names were simply there, and then they were not. In his notes, Greer wrote the following on the subject of these 3 absent names. I am reading this verbatim. They are not dead. If they were dead, there would be records. Bodies require paperwork. Autopsies require paperwork. Burial permits require paperwork. Death is the most bureaucratic thing a human being ever does. It generates forms in triplicate, and notification letters, and estate processes, and insurance claims. These people were not processed out of existence. There is no paperwork trail that leads to a grave. They were simply removed from the system. And the only organization I have ever encountered in my professional life that has the capability and the apparent willingness to remove a person from every system simultaneously without leaving a single administrative trace is the one that reassigned me without explanation for asking questions about a broadcast that my own supervisor stamped as routine. Raymond Greer disappeared in November 1995. He was 61 years old, retired from government service, living alone in Fredericksburg, Virginia. No immediate family, a few former colleagues he corresponded with occasionally. No one who would necessarily notice his absence quickly. No missing persons report was ever filed. His car remained in his driveway for 11 days before a neighbor called the police. Police conducted a welfare check, found no signs of foul play, and noted the absence as unexplained. The case was never escalated. It was classified as a voluntary disappearance, an adult choosing to leave without informing anyone. The storage unit in Alexandria continued to be paid for, automatically, from a bank account that should have been frozen upon his disappearance, for another 23 years after he vanished. We do not know who was paying it. We do not know why they stopped when they did. But we know that when they stopped, the documents inside became accessible for the first time. as though whoever had been maintaining that silence, whoever had been keeping those boxes hidden and that account active and that storage unit locked for more than 2 decades, had finally, for reasons we cannot know, decided it was time for someone to find what was inside, as though the archive had been waiting for permission to be seen. This has been Archive Log, File 002. This file was not scheduled for release. There is no record of who authorized it, no clearance request, no transmission log, which means it was not sent, it was accessed. If you are hearing this, you were not meant to. The signal described in this file has not been contained. It was never isolated, and it was never limited to the equipment that detected it. A slight distortion. Review of the original recording confirms the anomaly does not remain inside the footage. It responds to observation. If you noticed anything at all while viewing this file, you are now part of the record. Further exposure is not recommended. Repeated viewing may increase recognition, and once recognition occurs, the pattern does not stop. The screen remains black. There will be no further instructions. There will be no confirmation. Only this. If you replay this file, pay attention to where the camera ends, because it was not there at the beginning. The archive remains open for now.